Welcome to Pro Mindset. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today on our show, we have a gentleman by the name of Jeff Patterson. Jeff is a man that wears many hats. He is an author, a father. He has 2 kids, I believe. He's an entrepreneur. I would say you're almost like a mindset coach, being a martial arts person. And you have trained and coached and taught more than 25,000 students in the martial arts. So I want to welcome you to the show today. I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about what you do, how you think, how you train people. But thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, Jeff, let's just jump right in. Your latest book is called Yielding Warrior. Share with everybody what the theme, the framework, and what's the takeaway that someone's going to get by reading your book?
So yielding is a concept in the meditative and martial arts that can be applied to really anything in life. And I break yielding down into 3 categories. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the easiest one to understand. It's the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. And this has been used in the combative arts for generations. It's used in professional athletics, in sports across the board, and anything you could think of, it can have applications to it. In order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well-rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The breath has to be relaxed. The mind has to be present. And it literally takes years and years to get to a high level of this. But from day one, when you start doing these meditative practices and learning how to improve your overall awareness, you can start reaping some of the benefits from this awareness. Now, once you start to see those things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. And this is where we move into what I call mental yielding. And mental yielding is the idea that, say you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from the beginning. It's a lot easier to adjust this conversation and keep us in a harmonious place than if I'm not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. And it's not just that you're being more considerate, which is a great thing that we should all do anyway, but it's also can be very strategic. So it's used in relationships, in business, in sales, in negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can apply these strategies and this improved awareness to help lead things in a direction with the least amount of resistance to get the outcome that you want to achieve. One of my longtime meditation teachers, he always says, with yielding, you can learn how to make your enemies your friends, but without, oftentimes your friends can become your enemies. And this is an example of what I call mental yielding. And then there's also emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes things happen to us and we respond and we go down this path and we might get an hour a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back and analyzed the situation, oftentimes we can pick a more educated response to things because we're able to see things more clearly by this heightened awareness through practicing the meditative arts. Now, I've been explaining yielding concepts for years here at the Academy. I've been running this Academy for 30 years. And one of the most common things I hear people say is, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I use that all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding and just kind of who we are. But it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, he would see things about the series of events and the timelines that I know at least I would have no clue of. Well, when you start talking about your own internal awareness and noticing these subtle energies in other people, I feel like the only way that you can reach this high level of sensitivity is by practicing the meditative arts. And it's very much like in athletics. You think about oftentimes if a coach is working with a group of athletes and they're disciplined, they're on time, they want to do good. It's pretty easy to get that group of athletes to 85% of their potential. But getting them to 90%, 95%, 97%, now you're talking about, the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants out there that almost seem magical when they play. That's very rare. And I feel like without the meditative arts, when it comes to awareness, you can never get to that 95, 97%. And that's kind of the basic idea behind yielding.
Okay, so a lot of times there's work done ahead of time before you can actually show up and perform in that kind of awareness. What is the work that precedes those opportunities or those situations? And I know that I read about a handful of pages of your book just in preparation for this conversation, just to kind of get a flavor of what it's about. And you share in that book that you spent 8 months, roughly an hour and a half a day, meditating in preparation for learning new skills and having better awareness. What is that about?
So to enhance our ability to improve our awareness, the most important thing is building an evolving meditation practice in your life. And a lot of people say they do meditation, but meditation isn't meant to be a hobby that we do once in a while. It's meant to be a way of life. It's something that we integrate into everything we do. And it doesn't mean you need to be some monk that retires to a cave and meditates all day, every day. It's really easy to integrate meditative practices into everything we do. And I do this by using 3 different modalities. There's ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. Ritual practice, what I mean by that is where you set time aside every day, do a meditation practice. And it could be a sitting practice, a standing meditation. It could be a movement practice like a Tai Chi or Qigong or a yoga routine, something where we're exiting any video screens. We're not listening to audios. We're just kind of coming in and reconnecting to ourselves on a daily basis. And you could do that in as little as 20 minutes. The Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. It really is something that we need to do in that, in today's busy society, we all do this. We walk around the street, we meet other people, we're at business encounters, wherever we are. Oftentimes, we're forced to wear this mask because we don't want people to truly see how we feel or what's going on, or maybe we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And in wearing this mask so often, a lot of times you start looking at yourself in the mirror and you're still wearing that mask. The meditative arts helps us reconnect and stay in tune with who we truly are at the core. And that's an idea of what the ritual practice does. Then there's also active practices. And active practices are things that you can do when you're walking down the street or sitting in your car at a red light. They could be as simple as counting out 10 breaths or doing some spinal rotations or some kind of a movement exercise. And they're just ways to stay connected and be aware of what's going on throughout the day. And we'll talk in a little bit, maybe get into what the 5 regulations are and go into a little bit deeper about this. Then lastly, there's the philosophical side of the training. And the philosophical concepts can be applied in either active or ritual-based meditations. And so if you put together an evolving life practice using these 3 different modalities, now we can pretty much do anything with the meditative arts and start reaping the benefits of the practice.
Okay, let's take a little deeper dive just in the ritual meditation practice. Let's say I've got 20 minutes and I'm pretty dedicated. and I start today or tomorrow, and I turn off all electronics. I find my quiet place. I'm laying down. What now? What next?
You mean, what do you do for the 20 minutes?
Yes, sir.
So there's a variety of different directions you could go with a ritual practice. You could do a sitting practice, you could do a standing meditation, you could do a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong. Usually, what I recommend for people is to find something that they're going to stick with and they're going to have fun with. Something, sometimes people have a hard time sitting in one place for 20 minutes. And for somebody like that, I would recommend a movement practice, something that you can keep you a little bit more occupied with what you're doing. And again, as time goes by, this practice is always going to be evolving and you're going to be getting deeper and deeper into the practice. The meditative arts is very complex in that, I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still just a student. I'm learning all the time. I'm nowhere near being the master and it's my profession. And so putting this kind of time into it shows you how deep the practice can be. But that said, even for the brand new person coming to the practice, from day one, if you have a good guide that can help point you in the right direction and get you started on this journey, you can start reaping the benefits from the very beginning.
Okay. I'm going to ask that question, Jeff, a little bit differently. We have a neophyte, somebody that's never done it before, and they're interested in meditating, and they decide to do a ritual. They're going to be quiet. They're going to be silent. They're not going to do movement. What does that look like? Are they listening to a tape? Is it completely quiet? Where does their mind go? How do they handle thoughts that come in if they're trying to clear their mind? Walk us through the actual art of meditating, because a lot of people don't really understand what it is.
Sure. So I'm glad you mentioned the audio because that's something that, the meditative arts are often referred to as internal arts. And I think a lot of times people are listening to these audio programs and these guided meditations, which I think are great to learn how to meditate if you haven't done that before, but they're called internal arts for a reason. And the idea is we want to turn our focus inward and not listen to an audio and not watch a video. And while these things are good to help maybe teach us the strategy behind it, once we have that memorized, we need to shut the audios off, shut the videos off, and go inward for that practice. Now, as far as a specific practice you could do, there's so many. It could be a sitting practice where you sit for 20 minutes in a comfortable, erect posture where you're regulating your posture, regulating your breath, and focus on different breathing strategies. You could use normal abdominal breathing, reverse abdominal breathing. You could do energetic circulations. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can do a ritual practice. What I recommend is understanding why you're wanting to take on meditation practice and incorporate a ritual practice and active practices that will help you towards that goal. So for example, if you're somebody who is suffering from anxiety or high levels of stress, we could do more yin-oriented meditation practices to help bring that stress level down. But if you were somebody who is looking to boost your creativity or improve your energy, we could do more yang exercises to help build and strengthen that. You look at athletes or warriors, a lot of times they'll use that yang side of the breath to help get them pumped up for an event or to get them focused on something that they're getting ready to do. Performers use this all the time as well. There's really so many applications to the practice, and that's why there's so many different tools. And so when you ask about a specific ritual practice, that could be pretty wide range of different things.
Give an example. If you were going to, let's say there's somebody listening that's been interested in meditation, but they have no idea where to start. How do they give them, because you're giving them lots of options. I'm asking
Yes.
you to take it the opposite direction. Say, start with this, do this, do a breath work, whatever it is. And maybe they don't even understand what breath work means. So I want you to take it down to kindergarten level. If somebody was interested in checking it out and experimenting with it, what would that look like for them?
Well, it would depend on the person because not everybody's the same. It's kind of like you give them a prescription, right? You don't want to give a cancer drug to somebody who has a different ailment, right? And so if you were somebody looking to say, let's take stress reduction for an example. If you're practicing meditation for stress reduction, one thing you could do in a sitting practice would to be practicing a yin oriented style of breathing. And what I mean by yin breath is we focus more on the inhale side of the breath to help bring that energy inward. If you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. This is very good for helping to bring that stress level down. So if you were doing a sitting practice for, say, 20 minutes, you could focus on that yin side of the breath, maybe inhale for a count of 8, exhale for a count of 6, and this will help start to bring that energy inward and be a very settling meditation. And you could do this for a while to accomplish that goal. Now, if you were an athlete and you are looking to improve your performance, I would recommend maybe doing more of either movement practice to understand how to make these connections and be more in tune with the subtle energetic movements within the body and how they connect to the breath. A meditation, we have what we call the 5 regulations. There's regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is the easiest one to accomplish, and it's why we always focus on that first, whether you're doing a sitting meditation, a movement practice, or a standing meditation. And an example of this would be, you can ever think of a time when maybe you were sitting down at your computer and you've been there for 4 or 5 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you start feeling very lethargic and tired, maybe you're getting a sore neck. Well, everybody goes through this in different times if they have poor posture. This is very depleting in our energy. And then you think about another time where maybe the most interesting person to you in the world walks in the room and you just perk up and your body's erect and you think about the difference in how that energy feels in you. Well, we have the power at every day and every moment to change those 2 different physical states within our body. And so when we can learn to regulate our body and maintain that good structure and alignment, that helps change our overall energetics. Then there's regulating the breath. Regulating the breath is a big topic, and it's something that you can study for the rest of your life. There's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies and different techniques that you can do. And when you start to work with the breath, we'll start usually with something basic like a normal abdominal breathing exercise, and we can do this for a sitting practice or maybe a standing meditation. And as you're using the breath, we start understanding how to use it as a strategy. So for example, in Chinese philosophy, they call balancing the breath using the kan and li, or the water and fire. And we all do this to some degree. We go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Well, when you start getting excited, you can use that yin side of the breath or the inhale side of the breath to help bring your excitement level down. If you start feeling depleted, you can use the yang side of the breath to help find a little bit more energy and to keep yourself more balanced. So rather than being like a roller coaster where you're on this emotional up and down throughout the day, you can use your breath to help find a little bit more balance, helps you to improve your overall energetic state. Next, we have regulating the mind. Regulating the mind, again, is a lifelong practice. And, we all do this every day. You get distracted on something, and sometimes it takes you off on a negative tangent for an hour or even a week sometimes. And when we can learn how to regulate the mind and control that through meditation, it can give us the tools to stay out of those negative pathways. There's this story of these two monks who are walking down this dirt road after a big rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful lady, and she's standing there in a white dress, and the older monk sees her and she's crying, and he says, "Hello, can I help you? Is everything okay?" And she says, I got to be somewhere, but I can't get across this puddle without getting my dress all dirty. So he rolls up his pant legs, he walks across the puddle, he picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, and she's off on her way. Him and the younger monk walk down the road for a couple miles, and the younger monk is just furious. And finally he says, we're not supposed to touch ladies, but you did back there at the puddle. And the older monk looks down at him and he says, "You're still thinking about that lady? I left her back there at the puddle." And, it's a simple story, but think about how many times something negative happens to us or distraction happens to us, and we focus on that for an hour, a day, a week, whatever it is. And in athletics, and this is why so many professional athletes are turning to the meditative arts, how many times when somebody makes a bad play that they stew on it for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. The longer they're focused on that negative play that they just did, they're missing opportunities. They're hurting their team because they can't stay focused. And so meditation helps us build that muscle of getting distracted and coming back to center. And one of the most common misconceptions I hear for people starting to take on a meditative practice is that I tried meditation, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. It's not about reaching this state of nirvana and quieting your mind. It's about learning how to recognize the imbalance and using the practice, whether it be your posture, your breath, or a movement exercise, to help bring your focus back to center. And if you do 50 times or 100 times a day in your meditation practice, and you do that for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to be so good at, one, recognizing those distractions, and two, understanding when that happens, how do we bring our physiology back to a relaxed state? How do we bring our breath back under control? And how do we bring our mind back to being present and focused? And through this repetition, we almost become unshakable, where nothing can kind of throw us off of our center. And so this is an example of how we use regulating the mind. Then there's regulating the energy. Regulating the energy is a big topic. We could talk about that for the next couple hours, but the idea behind that is there's different energetic circulations in the body. There's different ways that we can connect the breath to those energies, use that. And once you have learned how to regulate the body, regulate the breath, and regulate the mind, regulating the energy is pretty easy. Lastly, regulating the spirit. In any high-level monk or meditation practitioner or Qigong practitioner, their ultimate goal is to reach this level of enlightenment through meditation. I've been practicing for a long time. I've traveled around the world many times over, studying with different teachers, and I've never once met anybody who I would consider is enlightened. And I, in fact, don't even know if that's possible in today's society, but that's kind of the series of different regulations that we go through within the training of the meditative arts.
Okay, let's pretend that you're coaching me and I'm a golfer and I'm on the golf course and I struggle with moving on from bad shots. What can I do in real time to regulate my mind, my energy, my body, my breath on the golf course after a bad shot?
So the first thing would be to notice when you have a bad shot, how does your posture change? And that awareness of noticing what changes within your posture is going to affect your breath and your mind and being distracted. So once we can correct that, then we go into the breath and we think about, okay, I get distracted. Do I get upset? Does my breathing change? Do I start feeling anxiety? What's coming on? What's happening to me when I make that bad shot? So we turn to adjusting the breath and finding that balance. And then we focus on, those first couple things for a while you make the bad shot. Okay, let's go back to that neutral state with our posture. Let's focus on connecting to that breath. Then we go to the mind. Where does the mind go when I make that bad shot? Do I think about why I'm a bad golfer, or do I think about what I messed up on, or what is it? Where do I go? And then once we recognize that, we start making those adjustments. We come back to the body, we come back to the breath, we learn how to bring our awareness back to center from continuous time that we've spent in meditation. And by being able to stay in that center focus, those outside distractions and those things that throw us off our game don't gain negative momentum in any one direction, because we're so focused and able to stay in that center state.
So let me do the best job I can in layman's terms to describe what I just heard you say. So if you have a plan of attack before you get to the golf, you know that you're not going to be Tiger Woods. You're not going to hit every shot perfectly. And when you do have a bad shot, you're going to take a second. You're going to have some awareness. You're going to see how you've responded physically. You're going to make sure you have excellent posture. You're going to have, maybe you're going to take a certain number of breaths that you've predetermined, because that seems to get you grounded. And then you're going to be positive and focus on the next shot. You're going to move on. You're going to forget the last shot because it's over. You can't change it. It is what it is. Is it that simple for somebody from a layman's perspective, or is it more complicated than that?
It is that simple in a way. It's very difficult, though, for anybody to stay 100% present. And the more that you can stay in the present moment, the less it's going to bother you, even if you have the past 10 shots being negative, right? So we're always focusing on that next shot with as much belief and as much intent that you can, with proper alignment, relaxed breath, that present state of mind, that positive attitude. I don't know if this number is correct, but I heard one time that Steph Curry on average misses his first 7 or 8 shots that he takes in a game. And if he let that bother him and he started focusing on how many shots he misses, think about how that's going to affect his overall 3-point game, which I know he at one time, he was one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Now, you have to be able to maintain that focus and that awareness and understand those imbalances so you could recognize them. It's kind of like, if I throw a rock down a hill and I pick up the rock, it's easy to do. But if I throw the rock down the hill and it starts an avalanche, it's kind of hard to stop the avalanche. When you can recognize these things from the very beginning, it's a lot easier to make these energetic adjustments.
Well, one of the things that I know for a fact is that LeBron James has the NBA record for the most missed shots, and it hasn't stopped him from taking more shots. And he's also made a ton. I think he's the leading scorer in the history of the game too. So it's like, or he's in the top 3. But it's like he doesn't allow his bad shots to infiltrate his identity. It's just, shooting is what he does. It's not who he is. And one of the things in Pro Mindset is separating the human beingness from the human doingness. And your human doingness is what you do. It's your sport. It's what you do. Where human beingness is, you protect your human beingness by not taking on the identity of what you do. Thoughts on that?
Yes, I think LeBron James is a great example. And I guarantee you, every time he goes to shoot, at least a high percentage of the time anyway, he 100% believes that ball's going in. He's spent so much time on the court. He's not focusing on maybe I might miss. You have to believe in yourself. But it's hard to believe in yourself if you can't be present. And the meditative arts is one of those things that helps you maintain present state of mind and be free of those distractions. I think to do that is one of the reasons why so many professional athletes are turning to this practice. I know when Phil Jackson was coaching the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, he was having his professional athletes practice Tai Chi and meditation because it improved their focus. So here you got some of the best players in the world that are doing this practice. There's a reason why they're doing that, and they help you to slow down and see that awareness and keep your mind focused on the positive.
One other concept that I've learned from professional athletes over the years is their ability to create a performance bubble, and that is a safe, healthy, positive headspace that they don't allow the distractions to come in. They don't allow their past to come in. They put that boundary up to where we're just going to focus on the here and now. They believe in themselves. They have confidence in what they do. They feel a measure of peace and freedom. And when you get to a mental state of freedom, it also permeates through your body, which allows you to perform freely, get in the flow, get in the zone, because you don't have performance anxiety. You're not stressed out. You're not feeling pressure. You're not thinking about the outcome of your performance. You're not thinking about the potential results, the recognition, all those types of things. You're just really embodying the moment. And that's a lot about what you're talking about is can we both be here right now on this podcast? Or you or me thinking about something else or being somewhere else or what we're going to do next? And when you can really fully embody the moment, you don't miss things. Even in conversations with people, if you're not really all there, that's when your wife says, I told you, and you're like, I didn't hear it. It's like, well, you weren't all there. You were thinking about what you were going to do next, and you weren't paying attention. Thoughts on that?
I think that kind of comes back to the idea of mental yielding. And when we can recognize those imbalances in people that we're talking to, whether it's through tension or shift in facial expression or their breath or their overall energy, by having this ability to be more in tune with those things. And you're totally right. You have to be present and focus and be geared towards that, or you're going to miss a lot of things. And that's why it's so important, one, to just be considerate and listen and not think about yourself and what you're trying to say or a point you're trying to get across, but more so to just be in the moment and go with what comes out, because I feel like that's so much more valuable than trying to force something down a direction that you want it to go, and that's kind of the idea behind yielding, in that there's a lot of times, especially in athletics or in the combat sports, where you get a big, strong athlete and it's easy for them to force their will on somebody. And it's the same with somebody who's really good in conversations or negotiations, to kind of force an outcome on somebody. But, I shoot to try to leave every conversation and every interaction that I have with anybody where we both walk away from that interaction on a positive note. And if you're just trying to butt heads and enforce your will, whether you get what you want or not, it's not leaving a positive mark. And, yielding, I think, teaches you how to find the shortest direct path to that positive outcome for everybody.
I'm not sure if I saw this in your book, but it was talking about road rage. Share with everybody how this awareness and yielding can be very valuable when somebody cuts you off.
Yeah. So, it's again, we're kind of letting our mind go down that negative path. If somebody cuts you off and your immediate instinct is, throw your fist up in the air, how long are you going to let that take you down that negative path? Some people might be frustrated the rest of the way home on a half an hour drive home. Other people might say, oh, that was kind of rude, and then go back to listening to their music. You've got to train yourself to recognize those imbalances from the very first disturbance, because it's so much easier to make that positive correction, through doing this consistent daily practice, through your ritual practice, through your active practices. That's part of the idea, is that we're fine-tuning that awareness so we can see these imbalances and these changes right from the start. And it doesn't matter if it's road rage or if it's somebody being rude to you in a conversation or whatever it is. You start to become unshakable and learning how to maintain that focus and that balance and that peace of mind in everything you do.
Okay, so for those listeners that are performance-minded people that want to go from, 75, 85% of their potential to 97% or a high number, whatever that might be, what's the next first step for somebody like that?
The first thing would be to find a guide, somebody that's going to help them incorporate the meditative arts into their life so they understand why they're doing what they're doing. You could easily go onto YouTube and see a billion different videos on this meditative practice, this movement practice, this thing and the other. And it's very confusing, especially if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. In the meditative arts, there's 5 different directions of the practice. There's the martial or athletic side, the philosophical side, the meditative or spiritual side, the therapeutic side, and also the medical side. And you might be following one practice that you see on a video that's taking you down one path, but you want to go down another path. And so having somebody to point you in the right direction is very important. Once we know where we're going, then we incorporate a ritual practice, something that we're consistent with and we're doing every day. And this is probably the most important thing to really reap the benefits of meditation, is you got to have that daily practice that you do every day, like you're brushing your teeth. And it doesn't mean that you need to meditate all day, every day for 10 hours a day. The idea is we just do that 20 minutes a day, and we're consistent with that, maybe a little more if you're extremely disciplined, whatever it is, and then integrate some of these active practices as well as the ritual-based practice. And once we start with that, we start noticing how the changes are coming and what we're doing, and then we evolve from there. And, any meditation practice that we do is going to change 6 months, 1 year, 5 years down the road. It's always going to be evolving depending on what our understanding of the practice is and where we're at that any one point in time.
You have young people coming into your business that are interested in martial arts, and they want to become warriors, they want to become fighters, they want to become champions, they want to have more self-discipline, they want to know how to protect themselves, self-defense, things like that. What is the biggest thing that they're surprised about? What's the thing that's going to benefit them the most that they don't even know that's going to help them? Is it meditation or is it something else?
I think everybody's battling with their own demons and has different things that they need to figure out how to overcome in order to be a good combat athlete. I was personally introduced to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way, whereas when I was a young guy, I was really into Western boxing and met this coach that was a very well-known coach. He'd worked with national and world champion level fighters. And, I really wanted to get to spend some time with him and study with him. And so I started showing up at the boxing gym when I knew he was going to be there and kind of following him around for a few months. Finally, he started taking me under his wing and showing me a few things. And it was only about 2 or 3 weeks of getting to know him. And he said something to me that changed my life forever and was totally unexpected, in that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing Tai Chi and meditation. And here I'm this young kid at the time thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better boxer? But I started doing the practice, and it changed my life in so many ways. And through the years, I've had thousands of students come through the academy, and I've seen the meditative arts change people in many ways, including the combat athletes that integrate this practice into what they're doing.
Okay. What's a question I didn't ask you, Jeff, that you would like to answer?
One thing I think is important for everybody to understand is it's easy to have good intentions and think about starting a meditation practice, but you really should take some time and think about why you want to start the practice. Are you suffering with anxiety or depression, or maybe you just want to improve your overall health and stay around longer for your grandkids, or maybe you want to improve your performance on the field, whatever it is, and really put some thought into this, because no matter how good your intentions are, it's easy for tomorrow morning to come around and the alarm goes off and you're supposed to get up and meditate and just hit the snooze button and say, I'll do it tomorrow. But if you have a lot of good whys as to why you should take on the practice, it's easier to pull yourself out of bed and make something happen.
Well said. We all need to know why we do what we do and what our purpose is, all those types of things, to give us the stamina, the self-discipline, the willpower to do it when it's not popular, when it's not comfortable, when you don't have enough time, all those types of things. Jeff, for anybody that's interested in reaching out, finding you, would you mind sharing your social media handles and your website and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, I'm giving away a free copy of my book right now. You just go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book. You just pay for shipping and handling, and we'll send out a book to you. You can also check out our online program there, or our teacher training program, and then all of the social handles, The Yielding Warrior, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things. You can find us with that.
Okay. Well, I do a little bit of meditation. I do breath work quite frequently. It's helped me in a lot of ways. I don't really have a disciplined practice like you were suggesting, but I've messed with it a little bit. I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today, Jeff. I want to wish you a wonderful day. My final thought is this: for all those listeners out there that think that shooting one more basket or hitting one more ball or catching one more pass or, working just 10 minutes longer on a presentation, those things are all valuable. But the inside work, the inner work of meditation, breath work, and things like that can make immense shifts in your performance if you dabble in some of those things. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a Pro Mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.